The empire was old. It stretched across 12 star systems, and its people had ruled the stars for thousands of years before humans even learned to make fire. There were tall, graceful beings with pale blue skin and silver hair that flowed like water. Their eyes glowed softly in the dark, and their voices sounded like music when they spoke. They believed themselves to be the most perfect species in the galaxy, and for a long time, no one disagreed with them. At the center of this great empire sat Queen on her throne of crystal and light. She had ruled for 300 years, and she would rule for 300 more. Her word was law. Her gaze was cold. She had built her empire on strength, on perfection, and on bloodlines that stretched back to the first stars. They did not have children the way humans did. Their reproduction was a sacred process called genetic bonding. When two wished to create a child, their bodies would merge their essence together at the deepest level. But this could only happen if their genetics were perfectly compatible. If they were not, no child would ever come. This was the way of and they believed it was the form of creation. Because of this, fertility was everything. A fertile was blessed, an infertile was cursed. There was no middle ground. Queen had 4 daughters. The first 3 were perfect in every way. They were strong, beautiful, and most importantly, they were fertile. They had been matched with powerful, noble males, and they had produced healthy children who would one day inherit pieces of the empire. The queen was proud of them. But then there was. Princess was the youngest. She had the same silver hair as her mother, the same graceful form, the same soft glow in her eyes. When she was young, everyone said she would grow up to be the most beautiful of all the sisters, and they were right. By the time reached her 100th year, she was stunning. Poets wrote songs about her. Artists painted her face on canvas. Young nobles dreamed of being matched with her. But beauty meant nothing without fertility. On the day of her coming-of-age ceremony, stood in the great temple while High Priestess performed the sacred reading. This was a tradition for all royal children. The High Priestess would scan the young's body and announce to the court whether they were blessed or cursed. Remembered standing there in her white ceremonial gown, feeling the eyes of 1,000 nobles on her. She remembered the warm light of the scanner passing over her body. She remembered the silence that followed. High Priestess had stared at her readings for a long time, too long. When she finally looked up, her face was pale. "The princess," announced, her voice barely above a whisper, "is without blessing." The court gasped, felt her heart stop. Without blessing. It was the polite way of saying barren, infertile, cursed. The readings showed that womb could not accept genetic material from any male. No matter who she was matched with, no matter how perfect the pairing seemed, she would never produce a child. Her body was broken in a way that could not be fixed. Queen had sat on her throne and said nothing. Her face did not change, but saw something die in her mother's eyes that day. It was hope. After the ceremony, waited for her mother to come to her. She waited for comfort, for reassurance, for someone to tell her that everything would be all right. But Queen never came. Instead, she sent a servant with a message. The princess would be moved to the eastern wing of the palace, away from the main court. Understood, she was being hidden. In the months that followed, became a ghost. She attended no celebrations. She was invited to no meetings. When foreign dignitaries visited, she was told to stay in her rooms. Her sisters stopped visiting her. The young nobles who had once dreamed of her now pretended she did not exist. The court whispered about her when they thought she could not hear. They called her the empty princess, the hollow one. Some said she must have done something terrible in a past life to deserve such a fate. Others said the royal bloodline was weakening and was proof of it. Heard all of it, and slowly she began to believe it. She spent her days alone in her chambers, reading old books and staring out at the stars. She wondered what purpose she had. In the empire, a princess existed to continue the bloodline. That was her only job, and she had failed before she even began. Sometimes, late at night, she would stand in front of her mirror and place her hand on her stomach. She tried to imagine what it would feel like to carry life inside her, but she could not. Her body was silent, empty, just like the whispers said. Queen watched all of this from a distance. She loved, she truly did, but love was a luxury that queens could not afford. In the cold mathematics of empire, every person had a value, and its value was zero. Worse than zero, she was a liability. If remained at court, she would become a symbol of weakness. Other noble families would point to her and say that the royal bloodline was failing. Enemies would use her as evidence that the queen's house was cursed. The longer stayed visible, the more damage she would cause. Queen needed to remove her, but she could not simply exile her own daughter. That would cause scandal. She could not execute her. That would be monstrous. She needed a solution that looked like kindness but was actually disposal. And then the opportunity came. The Galactic Union, the loose alliance of species that maintained peace across the stars, had been pressuring the to form diplomatic marriages with other species. It was a common practice: marry a princess to a foreign noble to strengthen ties. The had resisted for years, believing themselves too pure to mix with lesser beings. But now Queen saw a use for this demand. She would marry to an outsider, someone from a species so unimportant that no one would question why a princess was being given to them, someone who would take far away from the empire, where she would be forgotten. The queen smiled for the first time in months. She knew exactly which species to choose. The humans. They were new to the galactic stage, barely a century into space travel. They were considered primitive, emotional, and short-lived. Most thought of them as clever animals at best. Marrying a princess to a human would be seen as a generous gift to a lesser species. No one would suspect it was actually an insult. And would finally be gone. Queen summoned High Priestess to her chambers and gave her the order: find a human male, arrange the marriage, and make it happen quickly. The queen did not tell about this plan. She did not ask for her opinion. She simply made the decision, the way she made all decisions. Would learn her fate soon enough. And she would have no choice but to accept it. High Priestess did not like this task. She had served the royal family for 200 years, and she had seen many things, but arranging a marriage between a princess and a human felt wrong. It felt like throwing a diamond into mud. Still, she had her orders, and Queen was not someone who accepted failure. Sent messages to the human colonies, asking for candidates. She made it clear that this was a great honor, a chance for a human to marry into royalty. She expected hundreds of applications from ambitious human nobles and politicians, people who would see this as a way to gain power. Instead, she received very few responses. Humans, it seemed, did not care much about royalty. Most of them had never even heard of princess. Those who did apply were rejected quickly. They were too arrogant, too political, too hungry for power. Queen had been specific. She wanted someone unremarkable, someone who would take away and never try to use the marriage for influence. Finally, after weeks of searching, found him. His name was Ho. He was 32 years old, which meant he was practically a baby by standards. He worked as an engineer on a trade station orbiting a human colony world. He had no noble blood, no political connections, no family wealth. He was, by all measures, completely ordinary. When reviewed his file, she almost rejected him immediately. He was too simple, too plain. But then she stopped and thought about it. That was exactly what the queen wanted. Ho had applied because his station commander had suggested it. The commander thought it would be good for human relations. Ho himself had no strong feelings about the matter. He was single, he was lonely, and he figured that if the universe was offering him a wife, he might as well say yes. He did not know that he was being chosen because he was disposable. He did not know that the bride he was receiving was considered worthless by her own people. He simply saw a photograph of Princess and thought she was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. Sent the approval. The The marriage was arranged. Now she had to tell. The princess was in her chambers when arrived. She was sitting by the window, reading an old book of poetry. She looked up when the high priestess entered, and her eyes showed no surprise. She had learned to expect nothing good from visitors. "Your Highness," said, bowing slightly, "I bring news from the Queen." Closed her book. What has my mother decided now? Hesitated. She had known since she was a child. She remembered the bright, hopeful girl who used to run through the palace gardens. That girl was gone now, replaced by this quiet, hollow woman who spoke as if she had already died. "You are to be married," said. Blinked for a moment, something flickered in her eyes, hope perhaps, or confusion. "Married to whom? No noble would accept me." Nada said carefully, "A human." The room went silent, stared at the high priestess as if she had not heard correctly. "A human," she repeated. "Yes, Your Highness. His name is Ho. He is an engineer. The wedding will take place in 1 month." Sat very still. A human. Her mother was marrying her to a human. She understood immediately what this meant. It was not a marriage, it was an exile, a way to remove her from the empire without causing scandal. She should have felt angry, she should have felt betrayed, but instead she felt nothing. She had been feeling nothing for a long time now. "Does this human know what I am?" asked quietly. "Does he know I am barren?" Looked away. "He has been informed that you are unable to have children by standards. He has accepted this." "Accepted it," said with a hollow laugh. "Of course he has. He is getting a princess. What does he care if she is broken?" "Your Highness." "You may go, High Priestess," turned back to the window. "Tell my mother I accept her generous arrangement." Wanted to say something comforting. She wanted to tell that perhaps this would be a good thing, that perhaps this human would treat her kindly, but she did not believe it herself. Humans were strange, emotional creatures, who knew what kind of life would have among them. She bowed and left without another word. Sat alone in her chambers for a long time. She looked out at the stars and tried to imagine what human space looked like. She had seen pictures of their worlds, messy, crowded places full of noise and chaos, nothing like the clean perfection of cities. That would be her home now, a small station in human space, married to a man she had never met. She would live out her days there, forgotten by everyone, until her body finally gave out and she returned to the stars. It was a sad fate, but it was still a fate, and had stopped believing she deserved anything better. Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, Ho was preparing for his wedding. He stood in his small apartment on the station, looking at the photograph of his future wife. Princess. Even in the picture she looked sad. Her eyes were beautiful but empty, like windows into an abandoned house. Ho wondered what had happened to her. The official documents said she was being married off for diplomatic reasons, but he was not stupid. He knew that royalty did not marry commoners unless there was something wrong. Perhaps she was sick. Perhaps she had committed some crime. Perhaps she was simply unwanted. It did not matter to him. Ho had grown up poor on a farming colony. His parents had worked themselves to death in the fields, and he had escaped that life only by studying hard enough to become an engineer. He knew what it felt like to be seen as worthless. He knew what it felt like to be thrown away. If this princess was being discarded by her own people, then he would not discard her too. He did not know if he could love her. He did not know if she could love him. But he decided, standing there in his tiny apartment, that he would at least try to make her happy. He would treat her with kindness and respect. He would not make her feel like the garbage her family clearly thought she was. That was his promise to himself. When the wedding day came, Ho put on his best suit, a simple black outfit that looked cheap compared to fashion, and traveled to the... He walked through their gleaming cities, feeling every eye on him. They looked at him with disgust, as if a dirty animal had wandered into their palace. He ignored them. He had dealt with people who looked down on him his entire life. A few more would not break him. The ceremony was held in a small hall, not the grand temple where royal weddings usually took place. There were very few guests. Queen sat on a raised platform, watching with cold eyes. She did not smile. She did not speak to Ho directly. She simply observed, like a merchant watching goods being shipped away. And then appeared. She walked down the aisle alone. No one escorted her. Her sisters did not attend. She wore a simple white dress, beautiful but understated. Her silver hair was pulled back and her face was calm, almost peaceful. When she reached Ho, she looked at him for the first time. He bowed deeply, too deeply. The nobles whispered and spoke in her language which he had spent weeks learning. "I am honored to meet you, princess. I will do my best to be a good husband." Stared at him. No male had ever bowed to her. No male had ever spoken to her with such simple sincerity. She did not know what to say, so she simply nodded. The ceremony was short, the vows were spoken, and just like that was married to a human. As they walked out of the hall together, looked back once. Her mother sat on her platform, already turning away to speak with an advisor. She did not wave. She did not acknowledge her daughter's departure. Felt something break inside her chest. But then Ho touched her arm gently. "Are you ready?" he asked softly. "Our ship is waiting." Looked at this strange human with his warm eyes and nervous smile. She did not know him. She did not trust him. But he was the only person who had shown her kindness in years. "Yes," she said quietly, "I am ready." They walked out together, leaving the Empire behind. The journey from the to the human trade station took 3 days. Spent most of that time in her private cabin, staring at the walls and wondering what her new life would be like. She had brought very little with her, a few books, some clothes, and a small portrait of her family from when she was young, before she was declared barren, before everything changed. Ho left her alone during the journey. He understood that she needed space. Every few hours he would knock on her door and ask if she needed anything, food, water, company. Each time she said no, but she noticed that he kept asking anyway. On the 3rd day, she finally opened the door and found him sitting in the corridor, reading a book on his tablet. "You have been waiting out here?" she asked. Ho looked up and smiled. "Not waiting, just nearby in case you needed something." Did not understand this human. In culture, a husband would never sit in a corridor waiting for his wife. It would be seen as weak, submissive. But Ho did not seem to care about appearances. He simply wanted to be helpful. "We will arrive soon," Ho said, standing up. "Would you like to see our home? I can show you on the map." Hesitated, then nodded. They walked to the ship's observation deck together. Through the large windows could see a massive structure floating in space, a trade station built from metal and glass, surrounded by hundreds of smaller ships. It was ugly compared to architecture, rough and practical, with no elegance or beauty. "That is where we will live?" asked. "Yes," Ho said. He sounded nervous, as if he was embarrassed by it. "I know it is not like your home. It is small, but I have made our apartment as comfortable as I could." Looked at him. "You are worried I will not like it." Ho rubbed the back of his neck. "You are a princess. You grew up in palaces, and I am giving you a 2-room apartment on a trade station. I would understand if you were disappointed." Turned back to the window. She thought about her chambers in the palace, large, beautiful rooms filled with expensive furniture and art. She had lived there alone for years, surrounded by luxury but starving for companionship. "I do not need a palace," she said quietly. "I just need peace." Ho smiled at that, a real smile, warm and genuine. "Then I will do my best to give you peace." They docked at the station an hour later. As they walked through the busy corridors, felt overwhelmed. There were so many people, humans of all shapes and sizes, talking and laughing and shouting. Children ran past her, playing games. Merchants called out, selling food and goods. The air smelled of cooking and machine oil and life. It was chaos, absolute chaos. But it was also alive. The palace had been quiet, orderly, perfect, and suffocating. This place was messy and loud, but there was energy here. People actually lived here instead of just existing. Ho noticed her looking around with wide eyes. Is it too much? We can take a different route, something quieter. No, said slowly. It is just different. I have never seen so many people in one place. Humans like to be together, Ho explained. We get lonely easily, so we build places where we can all live close to each other. Lonely understood that word very well. They reached Ho's apartment, their apartment now, and he opened the door with an apologetic expression. It is small, he said again. Stepped inside and looked around. He was right, it was small. A main room with a couch and a table, a tiny kitchen in the corner, a bedroom through one door and a bathroom through another. The walls were plain metal and the furniture was simple and worn. But it was clean, and on the table she saw fresh flowers in a vase. You brought flowers, she said. Ho blushed slightly. I read that appreciate natural beauty. I thought maybe you would like them. Walked to the table and touched the petals gently. They were real flowers, not artificial. On a space station, real flowers were expensive. He had spent money he probably did not have to buy them for her. Something shifted inside her chest. Not love, it was too early for love, but something warmer than she had felt in a long time. Thank you, she said. They are beautiful. Ho's face lit up. I am glad you like them. Oh, and I prepared the bedroom for you. I will sleep on the couch. Turned to him sharply. What? No, you should not give up your bed for me. You are my wife, Ho said simply, and my guest. It is proper. In culture, a husband and wife share a bed. In human culture too, Ho admitted. But we just met. I do not want you to feel uncomfortable. I want you to have your own space until you are ready. Stared at him. This human continued to surprise her. He had every right to demand whatever he wanted from her. She was his wife, given to him by her own mother. But instead, he was sleeping on a couch to make her comfortable. You are strange, she said finally. Ho laughed. I have been told that before. In the days that followed, began to settle into her new life. It was nothing like she had expected. Ho worked during the day, leaving early in the morning and returning in the evening. But before he left, he always made sure she had food and entertainment. He showed her how to use the human computer system, how to access their networks, how to order anything she needed. If you need me, just send a message to my tablet, he told her. I will come right away. At first stayed in the apartment, afraid to venture outside. The station was too loud, too crowded, too foreign. But after a few days, boredom drove her out. She began exploring. She walked through the markets, watching humans bargain and argue and laugh. She sat in small restaurants, tasting strange foods that burned her tongue or made her eyes water. She visited the observation deck where she could look out at the stars and feel, for a moment, like she was home. Everywhere she went, people stared at her. Were rare on human stations, and her silver hair and glowing eyes made her stand out. But no one was cruel. Some people smiled at her. A few tried to make conversation, asking where she was from and how she liked the station. It was strange. On the she had been invisible, a shameful secret to be hidden. Here people were curious about her. They saw her as exotic, interesting, special. She was not sure how to feel about that. In the evenings, Ho would come home tired but smiling. He would ask about her day, and she would tell him what she had seen and done. He listened carefully, as if her stories were the most important things he had ever heard. Then he would make dinner. Simple human food, rice, vegetables, sometimes meat. Had never seen a man cook before. In culture, such tasks were beneath noble males, but Ho seemed to enjoy it. He hummed songs while he worked, and sometimes he would explain what he was making, teaching her the names of human dishes. After dinner, they would sit together and talk. He asked her about culture, and she asked him about human culture. She learned that humans loved stories, books, movies, songs. They created art constantly, as if they could not stop themselves. They fell in love easily and often. They cried at sad things and laughed at silly things and felt everything deeply. They were so different from the cold, controlled, so emotional, so alive. One evening, about a month after she arrived, realized something strange. She was happy. Not joyful, not ecstatic, but content. The heaviness that had lived in her chest for years had begun to lift. She did not dread waking up in the morning. She did not spend her days counting the hours until she could sleep again. She looked forward to Ho coming home. She looked forward to their conversations and their meals together. She looked forward to exploring the station and discovering new things. For the first time in decades, she had something to live for. That night when Ho fell asleep on the couch, stood in the bedroom doorway and watched him. He looked peaceful in his sleep, his face soft and unguarded. This strange human had given her something her own family never could. He had given her hope. 6 months passed on the station, and life changed in ways she never imagined. It started with small things. Ho noticed that she was bored during the days while he worked, so he began bringing home projects for her. Engineering puzzles, design challenges, broken machines that needed fixing. At first, thought he was joking. She was a princess. She had never worked with her hands in her life. But curiosity won, and she tried one of the puzzles. To her surprise, she was good at it. Very good. Her mind worked differently than human minds, and she could see patterns and solutions that Ho missed. When she fixed a broken navigation device in half the time his colleagues had estimated, he stared at her with amazement. "You are incredible," he said. Felt her cheeks warm. No one had ever called her incredible before. Word spread on the station about the princess who could fix anything. Soon, people started bringing their broken equipment to Ho's apartment. Charged nothing at first. She did not understand human money, but eventually, Ho convinced her to accept payment. "You are providing a service," he explained. "You deserve to be paid for your skill." "But I am a princess," said confused. "I do not need to work." Ho smiled gently. "You are also a person, and people feel good when they accomplish things, when they help others. Working is not about needing money, it is about having purpose." Purpose? That was a word that had been missing from her life for so long. So became a repair specialist on the station. She set up a small workshop in the corner of their apartment, and people came to her with their broken machines and left with working ones. She learned human technology, which was cruder than technology but also more creative. Humans did not have the elegant solutions that engineers used. Instead, they had clever, messy, improvised solutions that somehow worked anyway. It was fascinating, and it kept her mind active. As the months went by, his relationship with Ho deepened. They were no longer strangers sharing an apartment. They were partners, companions, friends. Ho taught her human music. He played old songs on a small speaker, explaining what the words meant and why the music was arranged a certain way. Taught him poetry in return, reciting ancient verses about stars and love and loss. He listened with his eyes closed, absorbing every word. One night she found him trying to write his own poem. It was terrible. His grammar was wrong, and his metaphors made no sense. But the fact that he tried made something flutter in her chest. They cooked together now, combining human and recipes into strange new dishes. Some were delicious. Some were disasters. They laughed at the failures and celebrated the successes, and somehow both felt equally good. Ho stopped sleeping on the couch after the 3rd month. Had finally insisted that he take his bed back. The couch was hurting his back, and she could not stand watching him wake up sore every morning. They shared the bed, sleeping on opposite sides at first, careful not to touch. But slowly that changed too. She woke up one morning to find his arm draped over her waist. He was still asleep, his breathing soft and steady. She should have moved away. She should have woken him and reminded him to keep his distance. Instead, she lay there and let herself feel safe. It was a feeling she had almost forgotten. One evening, about 7 months into their marriage, Ho came home with a gift. It was a small necklace with a blue stone that matched her eyes. "I saw it in the market," he said, suddenly shy. "It reminded me of you. I thought maybe you would like it." Held the necklace in her hands. It was not expensive, not by standards. The stone was probably artificial and the chain was simple silver. On her, such a gift would be considered cheap, almost insulting. But Ho had spent hours of his wages on it. He had seen something beautiful and thought of her. He had wanted to make her happy. Felt tears forming in her eyes. "I love it," she whispered. Ho's face broke into the biggest smile she had ever seen. "Really? You are not just saying that?" "I'm not just saying that." She put the necklace on and touched the stone gently. "It is perfect." That night she kissed him for the first time. It was not a passionate kiss, just a soft press of lips, quick and nervous. But when she pulled back and saw the shock and joy on his face, she knew something had changed between them forever. "I am sorry," she said quickly. "I should have asked first. I did not." "Do not apologize," Ho interrupted. His voice was unsteady. I have wanted to do that for months. I just did not want to pressure you." Laughed, actually laughed, a real laugh that bubbled up from somewhere deep inside her. "You are too kind, Ho, too patient. How did I deserve someone like you?" "You did not deserve me," he said simply. "I got lucky. A princess, willing to marry a simple engineer. I am the luckiest man in the galaxy." Shook her head. "You do not understand. My mother gave me to you because I was worthless, because I am barren and no wanted me. I am not a prize, Ho, I am a punishment." Ho's expression changed. The joy faded, replaced by something harder. He took her hands in his. "Listen to me," he said firmly. "I do not care what your mother thought. I do not care what they think. You are not worthless. You are brilliant and kind and beautiful, and every day I wake up grateful that you are in my life." His eyes met hers and she saw no deception there. No lies, just simple, honest truth. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me," he said, "and I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of you." Felt the walls around her heart finally crumble. The walls she had built to protect herself from pain, from hope, from love. They fell apart, and what remained was terrifying and wonderful. She loved him. She loved this strange, kind, humble human who saw her as treasure when her own people saw her as trash. "I love you," she said. The words came out shaky, uncertain. She had never said them before, not to anyone. Ho pulled her into his arms and held her tight. "I love you too," he whispered into her hair. "I have loved you since the day I saw your picture." They stayed like that for a long time, holding each other in their small apartment, surrounded by broken machines and old books and a life they had built together. Outside, the stars continued their eternal dance. The Empire went on without knowing or caring what had happened. Queen probably never thought about her youngest daughter at all. But none of that mattered anymore. Had found something better than a throne or a title, or the approval of a cold mother. She had found love. And for the first time in her life, she believed she deserved it. The months continued to pass, and Ho settled into a rhythm of work and rest, laughter and quiet moments. They built a life together, piece by piece, like one of the machines repaired. Neither of them talked about children. Condition was known. She was barren, unable to conceive with genetics. She assumed the same was true with humans. There was no point in hoping for something impossible. So she did not hope. She simply loved Ho and let herself be loved in return, and that was enough. Or so she thought. Until one morning when she woke up feeling different, opened her eyes and immediately knew something was wrong. Her body felt strange, heavy in a way it had never felt before. Her stomach was unsettled, and there was a warmth spreading through her lower abdomen that she could not explain. She lay in bed for a long moment, trying to understand what was happening. Maybe she was sick. Humans had many diseases that were not immune to. Perhaps she had caught something on the station. She sat up slowly, and the room spun. Nausea hit her like a wave, and she barely made it to the bathroom before she was sick. Ho found her there a few minutes later, sitting on the floor with her back against the wall. He rushed to her side, his face filled with worry. "What happened? Are you all right?" "I do not know," she admitted. Her voice was weak. "I feel strange. I think I may be ill." Ho helped her back to bed and brought her water. He wanted to call a doctor immediately but refused. It was probably nothing, she said. Just a small sickness that would pass. But it did not pass. Over the next few days, the symptoms continued. She was sick every morning. Her appetite changed. Foods she had once loved now made her nauseous, while strange human dishes she had never enjoyed suddenly seemed delicious. Her senses sharpened until she could smell things from across the room, and her body felt different in ways she could not describe. Fuller, warmer. Ho begged her to see a doctor, and finally she agreed. The station's medical center was run by humans, so was nervous. She did not know if they would understand biology, but the staff was kind and professional, and they assured her that they had experience treating many different species. Dr. Bin was assigned to her case. She was a young woman with sharp eyes and a calm demeanor, a geneticist who specialized in cross-species medicine. She ran test after test, taking blood samples and scanning body with machines she did not recognize. After an hour, Bin asked Ho to wait outside. She wanted to speak with alone. His heart began to pound. This was bad. Doctors only asked for privacy when they had terrible news. "What is wrong with me?" asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Am I dying?" Bin looked at her for a long moment. There was something strange in her expression, not sadness but disbelief, like she had seen something impossible. "Princess," Bin said slowly, "I have run these tests 3 times. I have checked my equipment twice. I wanted to make absolutely certain before I told you." "Told me what?" Bin took a deep breath. "You are pregnant." The words did not make sense. Heard them, but they seemed to come from very far away, like an echo from another world. "That is impossible," she said. "I am barren. My genetics cannot bond with any male. The High Priestess herself confirmed it." "Your genetics cannot bond with males," Bin corrected gently. "But your husband is not." Stared at her. Her mind was racing, trying to understand. "Human reproduction is different," Bin explained. She pulled up images on a screen, diagrams of DNA strands and genetic sequences. "Reproduction requires perfect genetic compatibility. Your bodies merge at the deepest level, combining essence to create new life. It is beautiful, but it is also very rigid. If there is any mismatch, any incompatibility, the process fails." "Yes," whispered. "That is why I could never have children." Bin nodded. "But human reproduction does not work that way. Our genetics are flexible, adaptable. We do not require perfect compatibility. Instead, our DNA finds ways to bridge gaps, to fill in missing pieces, to create something new from imperfect parts." She pointed to a particular image on the screen. "When I examined your reproductive system, I found that your body responded to human genetic material in a way it never could with material. Your husband's DNA did not try to merge with yours perfectly. Instead, it adapted to you. It found the gaps that made you incompatible with males, and it filled them in." Felt tears streaming down her face. She did not remember starting to cry. "What are you saying?" she asked. Bin smiled softly. "I am saying that your people tested you against males. No one ever tested you against a human. By standards, you are barren, but by human standards, you are perfectly fertile." Bin turned the screen to show a new image, a scan of womb. And there in the center was a tiny shape, a spark of life growing inside her. "You are approximately 2 months pregnant," Bin said. "The baby is healthy. It is growing exactly as it should." Pressed her hand to her stomach. Inside her was a child, hers and Ho's. The thing that should have been impossible was happening. "I need to see my husband," she said. Bin nodded and opened the door. Ho was packing in the hallway, his face tight with worry. When he saw her emerge, he rushed to her. "What is it? What did she say? Are you?" Took his hands in hers. She was shaking. Tears were still falling from her eyes, but she was smiling now. "Ho," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. "I am pregnant." Ho froze. He looked at her, then at the doctor, then back at her. "What?" "We are going to have a baby." For a long moment, Ho did not move. He simply stood there, his mouth open, his eyes wide, as if his brain had stopped working. Then he burst into tears. He pulled into his arms and held her so tight she could barely breathe. His body shook with sobs, deep, uncontrollable sobs that seemed to come from somewhere ancient inside him. "How?" he managed to say between cries. "They said, you said you could not." "It is because you are human," whispered. "Your genetics are different. They found a way." Ho pulled back and looked at her with an expression she would remember for the rest of her life. It was joy and disbelief and love and wonder, all mixed together into something pure. "We are going to be parents," he said. "Yes." He laughed then, a wild, happy laugh that echoed through the medical center. Other patients and staff turned to look, but he did not care. He lifted off the ground and spun her around, laughing and crying at the same time. "We are going to be parents." When he finally set her down, they stood there holding each other, surrounded by the white walls of the medical center, and felt something she had never felt before. Complete. She was no longer the empty princess. She was no longer the curse on her family's bloodline. She was going to be a mother. She was going to bring new life into the universe. And it was all because of a human. A simple, kind, ordinary human who had loved her when no one else would. Later that night, back in their small apartment, and Ho sat together on the couch. The shock had faded into something quieter, a peaceful certainty that their lives would never be the same. "We have to tell your mother," Ho said gently. Tensed, she had not thought about her mother in months. She had tried to forget the cold woman who had thrown her away like garbage. "Why?" she asked. "She does not care about me." "Maybe not," Ho admitted. "But this is not just about you. This is about the baby, your family's bloodline. The royal line will continue because of our child." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "I am not saying you need her approval. I am not saying you owe her anything. But if there is any chance that this could change things, that she could accept you again, would you not want to try?" Sat with that question for a long time. Part of her wanted to forget the empire entirely. She had built a new life here, a happy life. Why should she reach out to the people who had rejected her? But another part of her, the part that still remembered being a little girl who loved her mother, wanted to try. "I will send a message," she said finally. "Just a message, and we will see what happens." Ho squeezed her hand. "Whatever happens, I am with you." Nodded and began to compose the transmission. She did not know what her mother's reaction would be, but she had a feeling it would change everything. The throne room of the palace was silent. Massive pillars of crystal rose toward a ceiling so high it disappeared into darkness. Light filtered through windows made of colored glass, casting rainbow patterns across the floor. At the center of it all, on a throne carved from a single piece sat Queen. She was reviewing trade reports when High Priestess entered. The old priestess walked slowly, her staff clicking against the floor with each step. In her hands, she carried a tablet displaying an incoming transmission. "Your Majesty," said, bowing low, "a message has arrived from Princess." Queen looked up. For a moment, something flickered across her face, surprise, perhaps, or discomfort. She had not thought about her youngest daughter in nearly a year. She had assumed was living quietly on that human station, fading into obscurity as planned. "What does she want?" the queen asked, her voice flat. "I do not know, your majesty. The message is marked personal and urgent." The queen considered ignoring it. Whatever wanted, it was probably insignificant. A request for money, perhaps, or some complaint about her living conditions. Nothing that mattered. But curiosity got the better of her. "Show me," she said. Activated the transmission, and a holographic image appeared in the center of the throne room. It was, looking healthier and happier than the queen had ever seen her. Her silver hair was loose around her shoulders, and her eyes, once dull and empty, now shone with something bright. "Mother," said. Her voice was steady, but there was an edge of nervousness beneath it. "I know you did not expect to hear from me. I know you sent me away because I was a burden to you, but I have news that you need to hear." Queen leaned forward slightly. Despite herself, she was interested. Took a deep breath. "Mother, I am with child." The throne room went completely silent. High Priestess dropped her staff. It clattered against the floor, the sound echoing through the vast chamber. Several advisors who had been standing nearby turned to stare, their faces frozen in shock. Queen did not move. She sat on her throne, perfectly still, as if someone had turned her to stone. Her face showed no expression. Her eyes did not blink. She simply stared at the hologram of her daughter, trying to process words that made no sense. Continued speaking. "I know this seems impossible. The High Priestess declared me barren. By standards, I am. But my husband is human, and human genetics work differently than ours. Where reproduction requires perfect compatibility, human reproduction finds ways to adapt. My body responded to my husband's genetics in a way it never could with males." The hologram shifted, and medical scans appeared beside its image. They showed the inside of her womb, and there, clearly visible, was the shape of a developing child. "The doctors say the baby is healthy," said. "It will be a hybrid, part human, the first of its kind, and it will carry the royal bloodline forward." Queen finally moved. She stood from her throne, her robes flowing around her, and walked toward the hologram. Her eyes were fixed on the medical scan, on the tiny life growing inside her daughter. "How?" she whispered. Her voice cracked on the word. "Heard the question. I have Dr. Bin here with me. She is the geneticist who made the discovery. She can explain better than I can." The hologram shifted again, and a young human woman appeared. She had dark hair and intelligent eyes, and she spoke with the calm confidence of a scientist. "Your Majesty," Bin said, bowing her head in respect. "Princess was declared infertile because her reproductive system could not complete the genetic bonding process required by biology. The bonding requires perfect compatibility. Every genetic sequence must match precisely, or the process fails." She pulled up more diagrams, showing DNA strands side by side. "Human reproduction does not require this level of perfection. Our DNA is more flexible, more adaptable. When faced with genetic incompatibilities, human genetics find ways to work around them. We fill in gaps. We bridge divides. We create life from imperfect conditions." Bin paused, letting the information sink in. When Princess' body was exposed to human genetic material, it responded differently than it would have to material. Instead of failing due to incompatibility, the process succeeded. Her husband's DNA adapted to her unique biology, and conception occurred naturally. She gestured to the medical scan. "The child growing inside the princess is healthy and developing normally. It will inherit traits from both parents, some human. It is a true hybrid, something that has never existed before." Queen stood motionless, absorbing every word. Her mind was racing, calculating, processing. For years, she had believed her youngest daughter was worthless, a curse on the bloodline, a problem to be hidden and forgotten. She had given to a human precisely because she expected nothing to come from the match. And now this. The barren princess was pregnant. The royal bloodline which had assumed would end with branch would continue. And it was all because of a human, a species that considered primitive and inferior. Slowly, the queen turned to face High Priestess. "Did you know about this?" she asked. Her voice was quiet but dangerous. Shook her head, still pale with shock. "No, your majesty, I never. No one ever tested genetics against human genetics. We assumed they would be too different, too incompatible. We never imagined." "You never imagined that humans could do what cannot." The queen turned back to the hologram, was watching her nervously, waiting for a response. Beside her stood a human man, her husband, presumably. He was unremarkable by standards. Simple clothing, simple features, simple everything. But he had done the impossible. Queen felt something she had not felt in a very long time. It was not happiness. She was too proud for that. But it was close. It was the feeling of having been proven wrong in the best possible way. She said finally, "You have surprised me." His expression was guarded. "I know you did not expect anything from this marriage, mother. I know you sent me away because I was an embarrassment, but I am not an embarrassment anymore." "No," the queen agreed softly, "you are not." She studied her daughter's face, seeing things she had missed before. The strength, the resilience, the quiet dignity that came from surviving rejection and finding happiness anyway. This was not the broken girl she had sent away. This was a woman, a mother. "Your husband," Queen said, "the human, what is his name?" Ho answered. "And he treats you well." His expression softened. "He treats me better than anyone ever has." The queen nodded slowly. She looked at Ho directly for the first time, studying him through the hologram. He looked nervous but determined, standing straight despite the obvious pressure of speaking with an empress. "Ho," the queen said, "you have accomplished something no male could. You have given my daughter a child." Ho bowed his head. "I did not do anything special, your majesty. I just love her." Simple words, honest words, and somehow they meant more than any elaborate speech could have. The queen was silent for a long moment. The entire throne room waited, barely breathing, for her response. Finally she spoke. "I wish to see my daughter, in person. I will travel to your station." Gasps echoed through the room. A queen did not travel to meet lesser beings. Lesser beings traveled to meet the queen. For to go to a human station was unprecedented. But it had given her unprecedented news. Perhaps unprecedented actions were appropriate. His eyes widened. "Mother, you do not have to." "I know I do not have to," Queen interrupted. I want to see you. I want to see your life. I want to meet the man who gave you what I could not." She paused. "I want to meet my grandchild." Pressed her hand to her stomach, where the new life grew. Tears were forming in her eyes, tears of shock, of relief, of something that might have been hope. "You are welcome here any time, mother," she said quietly. "I will be waiting." The transmission ended and the throne room fell into chaos. Advisors rushed forward, asking questions, raising concerns, debating protocols. But Queen heard none of it. She stood alone in the center of the room, staring at the space where her daughter's image had been. For the first time in centuries, she had no idea what the future held. And strangely, that felt like a good thing. The news spread across the 12 systems like fire through dry grass. Princess, the barren daughter of Queen, was pregnant with a hybrid child. The father was a human, a simple engineer with no noble blood. And the pregnancy was healthy, developing naturally, defying everything they understood about their own biology. At first, many refused to believe it. It had to be a trick, they said, some kind of human deception. They had studied reproduction for thousands of years. They knew that genetic bonding required perfect compatibility, A human could not possibly succeed where males had failed. But the medical reports were undeniable. The scans were authentic. And when Queen herself announced that she would be traveling to a human station to meet her daughter, even the skeptics had to accept the truth. The impossible had happened. In the noble houses of the empire, conversations began happening behind closed doors. Every family had secrets, daughters who had been declared barren, sons whose genetics were flawed, branches of bloodlines that were expected to end. These unfortunate individuals had been hidden away, just like had been shameful reminders of imperfection in a society that perfection. But now suddenly there was hope. If a human could give Princess a child, could they do the same for others? Quiet inquiries began flowing toward human colonies. Noble families sent representatives to ask questions about human genetics, about compatibility testing, about the possibility of arranged marriages. The humans, who had always been treated as inferior, suddenly found themselves receiving attention from the highest levels of society. It was a shift that no one had predicted. The balance of the galaxy was changing, and a single pregnancy was the cause. Meanwhile, on the trade station, life continued. Pregnancy progressed smoothly. The baby grew stronger every week, and Dr. Bin monitored everything closely. The hybrid child was developing features from both parents. The shape of its face was human, but its eyes would glow like eyes. Its skin showed hints of the pale blue color that marked bloodlines. It was something entirely new, a bridge between two species. Ho was endlessly supportive. He read books on pregnancy, both human and. He learned to cook special meals that would provide the nutrition needed. He rubbed her back when it ached and held her when she could not sleep. He talked to the baby through stomach, telling it stories and singing its songs. "You are going to be so loved," he would whisper. "No matter what you look like, no matter who you become, you are going to be loved." Watched him with amazement. She still could not believe that this man was real, that anyone could be so kind, so gentle, so completely devoted to her happiness. She had spent most of her life believing she was worthless. Now, every day, Ho showed her that she was precious. When Queen's ship arrived at the station, it caused a sensation. No queen had ever visited a human settlement. The docking bay was cleared, and security officers lined the corridors. Every human on the station stopped working to watch the royal shuttle land. And Ho waited together outside their small apartment. Was nervous. Her hands were shaking and her heart was pounding. She had not seen her mother in over a year. The last time they were together had not even said goodbye. The queen arrived with a small entourage, high priestess and a few guards. She walked through the crowded corridors of the station, ignoring the stares and whispers, her eyes fixed straight ahead. When she reached, she stopped. For a long moment, mother and daughter simply looked at each other. The queen saw how much had changed, the confidence in her posture, the light in her eyes, the visible swell of her pregnant belly. This was not the broken girl she had sent away. Saw something different in her mother too. The coldness was still there, but beneath it was something else, something almost like regret. The queen said. Mother replied. They did not embrace. That was not the way, but something passed between them, an acknowledgement that things had changed, that the past could not be undone, but the future was still unwritten. Queen turned her gaze to Ho. He stood beside, trying his best to look calm despite his obvious nervousness. He bowed deeply, just as he had at the wedding. "Your Majesty," he said. The queen studied him for a long time, this unremarkable human, this simple engineer. He had no wealth, no power, no status. By standards, he was nothing. But he had done what the most powerful nobles could not. He had loved her daughter and given her a child. "Rise," Queen said finally. "You bow to no one in this family, not anymore." Ho straightened, surprised. "Your Majesty, I am honored, but I am not." "You are the father of my grandchild," the queen interrupted. You are the husband of my daughter. You have secured the continuation of a royal bloodline that was thought to be ending. You may not be, but you have earned your place among us." She paused, and something softened in her expression. "I was wrong about you, Ho. I was wrong about humans, and I was wrong about my daughter." Felt tears pricking her eyes. She had waited her entire life to hear her mother admit a mistake. "Come," Queen said, "show me your home." They walked into the small apartment, the queen of a 12-system empire, entering a 2-room home on a trade station. She looked around at the workshop corner filled with machines, at the worn couch, at the flowers in the vase on the table. "This is where you live," she said. It was not a question. "Yes," replied, "it is not a palace, but it is home." The queen nodded slowly. She picked up one of the repaired devices from his workshop. "You do this work yourself?" "I enjoy it," said. "It gives me purpose." "Purpose?" The queen turned the device over in her hands. "I never gave you purpose, did I? I only gave you expectations you could not meet." Did not answer. She did not need to. Queen set down the device and turned to face her daughter fully. "I am not good at apologizing," she said quietly. "Queens are not supposed to apologize. But I know I failed you. I saw you as a problem to be solved instead of a daughter to be loved. I sent you away hoping you would be forgotten." She reached out and touched his cheek gently, the first tender touch between them in decades. "I was wrong." Let the tears fall. She took her mother's hand in hers. "I forgive you," she whispered. "I forgave you a long time ago." They stood there for a moment, mother and daughter, finally seeing each other clearly. Then Ho cleared his throat gently. "Would you like some tea, Your Majesty? It is a human tradition. We drink it when we have guests." Queen almost smiled. "Yes, I would like that." They sat together in the small apartment, the queen of a human engineer and the princess who had been thrown away. They drank tea and talked about the future, about the baby, about what kind of galaxy the child would grow up in. 3 months later, gave birth to a daughter. She had her father's warm eyes and her mother's silver hair. Her skin was pale blue, and when the lights dimmed, her eyes glowed softly like stars. She was beautiful in a way that was entirely her own, not fully human, not fully, but something new. They named her, which meant kindness in an old human language. Queen held her granddaughter for the first time and felt something crack open inside her ancient heart. This tiny creature, this impossible miracle, was the future of her bloodline, and she existed because of a match that was supposed to mean nothing. They had always believed they were the most perfect species in the galaxy. They had looked down on humans as primitive and emotional and weak. But humans had something that did not. They had adaptability. They had resilience. They had the ability to create life where logic said none should exist. And most importantly, they had love. Simple, honest, unconditional love that did not care about genetics or status or perfection. Ho had shown that too, and now Little would show it to the galaxy. As Queen held her granddaughter, watching the baby's eyes glow in the dim light, she understood something that changed her forever. She had tried to throw away her weakest daughter. Instead, she had accidentally given her the greatest gift in the universe. And it was all because of a human. The word for miracle was eventually retired from common use. It felt outdated, too limited for what had happened. In its place, they began using a different word, one borrowed from human language. The word was hope. And it started with a simple engineer who loved a princess no one else wanted.